Alright boys, we got something a little bit different today. Instead of my usual AR stuff, we have a custom bolt action to look at. So, this will be something a little bit out of my comfort zone. It's been years since I touched a bolt action. I've stuck to ARs for the past forever basically. But anyway, in this video, we will take a quick look over the custom build, go over the shooting setup, and then head to the range to shoot some 30-shot groups. Plus, I'll have a little bonus section at the end to compare the ballistics of this 6.5 Creedmoor to a 223 rifle. But first, here's a word from my sponsor. Today's video sponsor is Jack Wolf Knives. Jack Wolf Knives is based right here in Phoenix, Arizona. They offer a variety of high-quality, everyday carry pocket knives. They're best known for taking timeless knife designs and producing them with modern materials and methods. Whether out in the field or at a nice dinner, Jack Wolf has an option for you. So, if you're looking for an heirloom quality knife to add to your collection, check out Jack Wolf Knives on the web or Instagram. Available for purchase at their authorized dealers worldwide. And don't forget to visit his booth at the 2025 Blade Show in Atlanta, Georgia, June 6th through 8th. Alright, a special thanks to Ben Belkin, owner of Jack Wolf Knives, for making this video possible. This is one of his personal rifles, and he also provided the ammunition for it today. So, getting to it, we are going to do things a little bit different today than my usual AR-15 barrel series. You can think of this video as potentially a pilot or trial episode. I'm not sure if I'll be starting a full bolt action series, but this range session was certainly a learning experience. But I would still have a few things to figure out if I were to make this into a full-on series. Anyway, let me know in the comments if you guys would like to see more bolt action stuff, and I'll see what I can come up with. Getting to the rifle, it was custom built by Phoenix Custom Rifles on March 9th, 2025. The rifle uses a left-handed impact 737R action from Impact Precision Shooting, and it features a 75-degree bolt throw, as well as a trigger from TriggerTech. Mated to the action is a 28-inch Brux barrel and 1-to-8 twist with a heavy varmint contour, and has an Area 419 Hellfire muzzle brake. The chamber is cut for a 6.5 Creedmoor, and has a shorter freebore that puts a bullet 30 thousandths closer to the lands. This action and barrel sit in an MDT ACC Premier Gen 1 chassis system, with the MDT rubber dampeners installed in buttstock. MDT advertises that these dampeners absorb vibrations, resulting in faster settling, and a dead-feeling gun, allowing you to better stay on target. Up front, the rifle is supported by an Accutac WB-5 bipod, and in the rear, a MDT bag rider is attached to the stock, which creates a better interface with the rear bag. And all this comes in at a weight of about 22 pounds. Next up, we'll take a quick look through the Borescope. Alright, so the rifle had about 220 rounds through it before this range session, and Ben had cleaned it prior to getting this Borescope footage. Anyway, here's a quick peek at the chamber wall, which looks fine to me. There's not a whole lot to see here. And here we are at the throat. As you can see, it's really shiny, so it's kind of hard to get a good look at things, but everything looks great to me. It looks like there might be some very light machining marks or something, but it certainly doesn't concern me. And here's the rifling a little bit further up the barrel. Everything obviously looks good to my eyes here. I don't see anything that would give me any concerns. And last, here's a quick spin around the crown. And as with everything else, no concerns for me here either. So, next up we'll go over the shooting setup, and then hit the range. I'll be shooting 3 different types of ammo. With each load, I'll be shooting 3 10-shot groups, with a cooling period between each group per the owner's request. The barrel will be cooled with a chamber chiller and a leaf blower between each group. All shots will be fired at 100 yards. The 3 10-shot groups from each load will be combined to make a 30-shot aggregate. The barrel was cleaned before this range trip. A few rounds are fired before shooting the first group to foul the bore and zero the scope. Action screw torque was confirmed at 65 inch-pounds. Scope mount and scope ring torque was confirmed at 55 inch-pounds. The rifle will be supported with a bipod up front as well as a rear bag. A Garmin 0C1 Pro chronograph is mounted to the rifle and will collect velocity data. The 10-shot groups will be measured by the Ballistic X app. The 30-shot aggregate will be measured by on-target TDS software. Point of aim was a small circle at the bottom of the target, and the point of impact was set a few inches higher to preserve the aiming point. I'll be shooting 3 different types of ammo today. First is Hornady 147 grain ELD match. Next, I'll be shooting Federal Gold Medal with 140 grain Burger hybrids. And last, I'll be shooting PPU Supreme line loaded with 140 grain Sierra Match Kings. Alright, let's do it. So, when I got into position to shoot, I started to get really nervous. The rifle is obviously set up very well to shoot like this, but I'm just used to ARs, so everything felt just a little bit different. And also, the pressure of having high expectations for this rifle and knowing that I'm going to post it on YouTube just kind of got to me. The first 2 10-shot groups really didn't feel good on my end. I was just really nervous and getting used to the rifle. But by the third 10-shot group, I started to relax and settle in. Anyway, the wind was quite a bit more active during this range session than it usually is, so that was a little bit different. And the chronograph captures all the shots, which is nice. So we'll finish up and take a look. Okay, so the Hornady 147 grain ELD has an advertised velocity of 2,695 feet per second out of a 24-inch barrel, and we got 2729 out of this 28-inch barrel, which gives us 2,430 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. Standard deviation came in at 18 feet per second, which is pretty decent, with an extreme spread of 67 feet per second. Looking at the individual velocity for each shot, nothing really looks out of place to me, and I marked the velocity highs and lows for each 10-shot group if you're into that sort of thing. And now we have to talk about shot number 8 from the first 10-shot group. So for groups 1 and 2, I was really nervous and still getting used to the rifle. I normally shoot ARs, so this is all a bit new to me. And to be honest, I'm surprised the groups are as good as they are with how bad the shooting felt. But shot number 8 was 100% me. I flinched really bad right before I broke the shot. So out of all the shots fired for this video, I'm taking back this one because it was definitely my fault. If you're a normal viewer of my channel, I use a Mantis X to track any potential flyers. However, it didn't work for this application. I think the recoil was just too light and it didn't record any of the shots. Anyway, there is a similar product from Shooters Global called the SG Pulse, and it looks to have a very similar stability mode, but it looks more appropriate for this type of application. Ben actually has this installed on his rifle, but I think he just uses it for the level feature. I don't think he uses it for the stability mode, and I just wasn't thinking about it at the time, but we could have easily switched over to that to get the shooter feedback. But usually I have about a million things run through my head when I'm at the range, so I just didn't think of it. But anyway, the SG Pulse is on the to-get list, but ammo expenses keep on getting in the way. So, lessons learned, and I guess there's always something that goes sideways with something new. But enough of that, let's get back to the groups. So, comparing the groups to one another, the third group, shots 21 to 30, ended up being the best group, with a group size of 0.629 MOA and a mean radius of 0.215 MOA. Okay, so what does it look like if we combine all these shots together? If we combine the three groups into a single 29-shot group, we end up with a group size of 0.945 MOA and a mean radius of 0.280 MOA. So, not too bad considering how the shooting felt on my end. And I'll certainly take it for the first group that I shot with the bolt action since basically forever. And again, the first 20 shots really didn't feel too good at all on my end. You can see that the first group was quite a bit lower than the second two groups, and I'm pretty sure that's from me being nervous and just anticipating the shot. But anyway, I'm sure a better shooter could shoot some smaller groups, but we're just going to keep moving forward and shoot the next group. The shooting with the Federals felt a lot better on my end. I was starting to get a lot more comfortable with the rifle, and also just less nervous, which helps out a lot too. Anyway, that's not to say that every shot was perfect, but I at least felt like I was shooting to my potential. The wind was gusting quite a bit, so I had a few brief pauses between shots so the wind could die down. The chrono captured all 30 shots, which is nice, and yeah, this group felt a lot smoother on my end compared to the last one. So, we will finish up the group and then take a closer look. Alright, so the Federal Gold Medal with 140 grain Burger Hybrids has an advertised velocity of 2,725 feet per second out of a 24-inch barrel. And out of the 28-inch Brux, the average velocity was 2,825 feet per second, which gives us 2,480 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. The velocity standard deviation was really good at 12 feet per second with an extreme spread of 43 feet per second. Looking at the individual velocity data, nothing looks out of the ordinary to me. And again, I marked the velocity highs and lows for this group. So we will keep moving forward and take a look at the groups. And it looks like shot number 6 on the first group looks a little bit out of place. Also shot 1 on the second group is a bit farther out than the rest. Both of those shots felt fine on my end. And again, I'm not saying that I'm a perfect shooter, but nothing felt bad about those shots as far as I could tell. Anyway, it looked like each group got a little bit better the more I shot, with the last group being the best group with a group size of 0.673 MOA and a mean radius of 0.193 MOA. And now we'll take a look at what happens when we put all these three groups together. So, if we combine all 30 shots into a single 30-shot group, we end up with a group size of 1.059 MOA and a mean radius of 0.262 MOA. And you can see here that shot number 6 increased the group size by a few tenths, but still a pretty respectable group for me. At least I think so. Anyway, let's get started with the last group. Shooting felt fine on my end with the PPU, but other than that, just about everything else went wrong. The shooter cam ran out of memory about halfway through the second group. The first group was a group of 9 instead of 10. For the second group, I did the exact same thing again and only shot 9 rounds. For the third group, I shot 11 rounds, forgetting that I had to make up 2 shots instead of just a 1. We will finish with the group here and then take a closer look. Okay, so the PPU loaded with 140 grain SMKs has an advertised velocity of 2,690 feet per second, and I'm guessing that's out of a 24-inch barrel. And with this setup, I got an average velocity of 2,758 feet per second, which gives us 2,364 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. And the standard deviation wasn't too bad at 23 feet per second with an extreme spread of 89 feet per second. Looking at the individual velocity data, again, everything looks fine to my eyes. So we will continue on and take a closer look at the groups. And the first group looked really good, minus shot 2, which ended up being quite a bit higher than the others. And everything felt fine on my end with that shot. So I don't have an explanation for that one. And the second group opened up quite a bit, and it is also a little bit wider than it is tall. Again, all the shots felt fine with that group. And the third group looks more or less fairly well distributed. And looking back at the first group, even with shot number 2 being a little bit wild, the first group ended up being the best group with a group size of 0.793 MOA and a mean radius of 0.233 MOA, although the other two groups weren't too terribly far behind. And looking at the 30-shot aggregate for the PPU Supreme line, we ended up with a group size of 1.122 MOA with a mean radius of 0.297 MOA. And the group looks decently well distributed with one little guy out to the left there. So not too bad for me. And next up, let's take a look at the overall results. But before we get to the overall results, we'll do a quick primer on my A-ZED score for the new folks. So A-ZED is an acronym that stands for A-Zone Equivalence Distance, and it basically gives you the maximum distance where the calculated group size would still fit into a USPSA A-zone, which is 5.91 inches wide. The reason why I use this score is because it's just easier for me to make sense of things compared to looking at the raw mean radius numbers. Anyway, the federal gold medal put up with the best group with an A-ZED score of 539 yards, followed by the Hornady at 504 yards, with the PPU being the least expensive of the three, and coming in last place with an A-ZED score of 475 yards. And of course, keep in mind that these are my results that I was able to achieve under these conditions on this day. I certainly don't claim to be a perfect shooter, so I am sure that this rifle is capable of at least a little bit more with a better shooter. Also, with a different factory load or a tuned-up hand load, the rifle may perform even better still. Anyway, just because we can, let's see how this stacks up against everything else that I've shot so far. Now, don't take this too seriously. Obviously, we have a custom bolt action against a bunch of gas guns, so not exactly an apples-to-apples comparison here, but I think this makes for a bit of fun. Anyway, unsurprisingly, the Phoenix custom bolt action comes in first place, but honestly, it didn't beat the Sons of Liberty SPR as bad as I thought it would, which of course may be influenced by me shooting one rifle better than the other. Anyway, here's a side-by-side of the groups with the Phoenix Custom Rifle versus the Sons of Liberty Gunworks SPR barreled AR-15, which is the most accurate AR barrel I've tested so far. And you can definitely see a difference between these two groups, but hitting a small target far away takes a lot more than just printing small groups at 100 yards. So let's take a peek at that next. So Applied Ballistics has a pretty handy tool called the Weapon Employment Zone, or WEZ, and it's basically a highly sophisticated hit probability calculator. It's useful for many things, but one of the things that I find it most useful for is comparing between different cartridges. So in this instance, we are going to be looking at a few different scenarios, comparing my AR-15 with a Sons of Liberty Gunworks SPR barrel shooting 73 grain ELD match, compared to a Phoenix Custom Rifles bolt action in 6.5 Creedmoor. And we'll be looking at the hit probability on a full-size IPSC metric target at 800 yards. Okay, so first we're going to set up the scenario based on real-world data. So we are going to use the following data from our 30-shot 100-yard group test, and that will include the average velocity, velocity standard deviation, and then for the rifle precision, we are going to use the mean radius times 4 from the 30-shot groups. You could certainly argue to use a different value for the rifle precision input, but this is what I'm going to go with. Anyway, then for the BC, Applied Ballistics has data for both the 140 grain burgers as well as the 73 grain Hornady ELDs, so we're just going to use that. Okay, and here are the environmental settings that I'll be using for both rifles. Temperature will be set at 78 degrees, humidity 21%, and pressure at 29.77. And here are the shooter settings. These will be the same between both rifles. Alright, so the Phoenix Custom Rifle in 6.5 Creedmoor shooting Federal Gold Medal would have a 91% hit probability on a full-size target at 800 yards. And the AR-15 with the Sons of Liberty Gunworks SPR barrel shooting 73 grain ELDs would only have a 36% hit probability on that same target. Okay, so why is there such a big difference between the two? The short answer is that the 6.5 has a much more stable velocity due to the lower velocity SD, which will reduce the amount of vertical spread. Also, due to the higher muzzle velocity and better BC, the 6.5 will also have a shorter time of flight of 1.06 seconds versus 1.43 seconds, which is one of the reasons why it will resist the wind better as well. Okay, so what if we have a little bit more of an even matchup? For this next scenario, we will keep the same settings with the 6.5 Creedmoor and change the settings for the AR-15 to have the same velocity SD of 12 and the same rifle precision of 1.05 MOA. All of the other variables will remain the same as the previous scenario. So, since we didn't change anything with the 6.5, it still has the same hit probability of 91%, and mainly due to reducing the muzzle velocity SD from 27 to 12, but also due to slightly better rifle precision, the AR-15 was able to increase its hit probability from 36% to 54% for this theoretical heads-up scenario. So, when you're shooting things at distance, the differences in cartridges will really start to show up more compared to just shooting groups at 100 yards. Of course, aside from hit probability, there are plenty of other things to consider, like system weight, rifle cost, ammo cost, effect on target, as well as a bunch of other stuff that may sway you from one cartridge to another. But for whatever your engagement scenario is, hit probability would likely be at least one significant factor to consider. Let me know what you think of this bolt action content. AR-15 stuff will still be my main content for now, but I might mix it up with some other platforms depending on the response of this video. So let me know what you think. And again, a big thank you to Ben Belkin of Jack Wolf Knives for making this video possible. I thought it was a fun change of pace and also a bit of a learning experience for me, being my first time shooting a bolt action since a while. So that was pretty cool. And I think that'll do it for now. I'll see you next time. Later.